Have you heard the story of the walking man who's journeying across the USA? He's an ordinary guy, you might even pass him by as he travels down the road along the way.
There's Byrd walking and pain walking, and I might go insane walking when every bone and joint wants to explode. But when I can't take more walking, there's fury, hate, and war walking to keep me walking further down the road. And when I die, there'll be nothing for the ride. When I'm gone, no reason to be blue. There'll be nothing left behind, and nothing left to do. Do it all as I go passing through. I wanna do it all as I go passing through.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, everybody. Good evening.
It is so delightful to be with you all. Hi, David. How you doing?
I'm good, Donna Lynn. How are you? It's so good to see you here.
I'm well. It's good to see you, as if we hadn't spent half the day on Zoom together.
I was going to say, today is not the first. It be the last.
No. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in the green room. I'm Donna Lynn Hilton, Artistic Director for Goodspeed Musicals.
And I'm David Byrd, the new Managing Director at Goodspeed Musicals. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, it's great. David, you've been here. Well, I think this is our third week working together. How's it going?
It's going really well. It has been fast and furious. At once it feels like 2 weeks, and then it feels like 2 months. The old adage of drinking from the fire hose is a real thing, but it's really good. I'm just thrilled and so honored to be in such good company. I've been able to meet with so many members of our staff, our incredibly talented staff, some of who are on this call tonight. Also our members and our donors. We can't wait to gather with you again. It's gonna come. Get ready. I just feel really good about being here. And of course, Donna Lynn. We've spent a lot of time together, and we'll continue spending a lot of time together. And I'm just so honored to be able to be your partner in crime here.
Oh, thank you. I feel the same way. It sounds like Pollyanna, and I'm waiting for us to have some big blow up and disagree about something, but it's going well. I think that it's good. It's good. We talk, we collaborate, we're making plans, we're challenging perception, assumptions, and it's all going to be good. It's going to be good.
That's right.
So we're here tonight because last week we announced a really exciting new adventure, Goodspeed On Demand, which will provide streaming content regularly to our audience here in Connecticut, our members and subscribers here in Connecticut, and we hope across the world because we're streaming and people can see us anywhere. Tell us more about what's going on, David.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to also thank our donors and our members who've helped make this possible. The words that we keep talking about, pivot, adaptability, flexibility, all of it is so true. And we're here at our very first Goodspeed On Demand experience here very soon because of the incredible generosity of these folks. So thank you for supporting us and making this happen. So here we are. We just announced Passing Through will be our first Goodspeed On Demand streaming production. And we can't wait to talk to members of the creative team here in just a little bit. And Donna Lynn, did you have any teases for some upcoming programs?
Well, I have some teases. We have we have one project already in the can. It's being edited. And we have another project that we're going to start capturing in April with a collaborator that we've worked with a lot at Goodspeed. I have one more hint I could give, but I'm afraid it'll give things away. And then Dan McMahon will yell at me, and it'll be very, very ugly. But there's some really cool stuff coming. Some of it will be like concert, cabaret type capture. Some of it will be in collaboration with other theaters because it is risky. We don't know how an audience is going to come to us with streaming. So we're all trying to mitigate the risks. And so some of it will be collaborations with other theaters, and some of it will be exciting, completely Goodspeed grown projects like Passing Through. And maybe that's a good segue.
Yeah, I think it is. So I feel very fortunate that last weekend I was able to experience Passing Through for the very first time. Obviously, being a new team member at Goodspeed, I sat down. Whoops, frozen.
Yeah, you're a little unstable, David.
People thing here. I'm not going to take that personally.
You're good.
I sat down on my couch and had a remarkable experience watching Passing Through. Just the connectivity of it, the humanity of it. By the end, I was a puddle on said couch, but it was really remarkable. And I think I messaged you pretty quickly, Donna Lynn, after viewing it, just because I was so touched. Yeah. So I'm thrilled that we get to speak to some of the creative team tonight, and that our patrons get to meet them.
I know. Let's bring it in. Okay, so let's bring them in. So please welcome our guests tonight, writers Eric Ulloa and Brett Ryback, the authors of Passing Through, and our director, Igor Goldin, and our choreographer, Marcos Santana.
Hi, everybody. Welcome.
Hi.
It's so good to be in the same room with you, and I use the room lightly.
The gang's back together. Look at us.
Yeah, the gang's back together. And just before we came on, Michael Fling reminded us that Eric and Brett, you were our very first guests in the home office in 2020. So welcome back.
Thank you. We were just having on the test earlier that there was, nothing will make you really remind you of the year mark of feeling deja vu than being in the exact same space that you were a year before. I go, this is the perfect way to start the new year.
Just crazy, right? Just crazy.
It is.
And we're in so many different locations too, right?
Yeah.
Where is everybody?
I'm calling in from LA.
Great.
And Brett?
New York City.
I mean, Eric. I'm sorry, Eric. Your name. I forgot your name.
Manhattan, New York. Yeah. I'm in upstate at Tuxedo Park.
Oh, cool. Excellent.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Very good.
So not as far afield as we hope our audience is going to be for this exciting share. So first of all, thank you all for making this possible, because we did have to get a lot of permissions to pull this all together. And I will say it was completely unanimous. Everybody involved with the show was, yes, please. This is a story that needs to be told. This is it's more timely now than it was when we produced the show at the Terrace in 2019. So I guess my first question is for Eric and Brett. What are your thoughts now that we've been able to pull this together, and you know that a much wider audience will be able to see the capture of the developmental production of the show? What are your thoughts?
Brett, you start.
Well, I'm very excited just for that fact alone, to that, the opportunity to maybe have a wider audience get to see this, because I do think that for those who don't know, this is based on a true story about a young man who walks across the country from Pennsylvania to California, and the people that he encounters along the way sort of change his story and allow him to sort of come to terms with some stuff in his past. And so I think that it has a broad appeal in terms of this country, people from all over the place getting, in all different kinds of walks of life, getting to see this story and hear this story. I also think that after a year, as we've just talked about, of not being able to connect and feeling very isolated and alone and disconnected, I think that this piece sort of, in a weird way, takes on and tackles a lot of those emotions, and kind of gives us a glimpse of maybe a future that we may shortly have, of being able to finally reconnect and finally be in the conversation once again with one another in a very deep and meaningful way. I mean, I think there's a lot I could say about how this piece suddenly resonates after the previous year, but I know Eric will probably want to say some of those things too. So go for it, Eric.
I have a few thoughts. It is, you always hope that your piece that you write has a lasting shelf life and continues to touch people and find something at the core of the story that correlates to how people are feeling, forever and ever and ever. Who would have known a year ago that we were going to be in this place, and that we were, and that the story was going to become, like Brett said, so pertinent. But whereas, some could, say it speaks to what we lack today too. I also think that this piece, I felt it then, I feel it 100 times more over now, is, and I say this as the vessel, this is not my story. Brett and I took the story and made a musical version of a real man's story and his real experiences of all these people. So, but how the story has become a continuous tonic for what we're in the midst of right now. Reminding us the importance of connectivity, reminding us that we keep pulling apart, and that's not how this all works. We have to come together. We cannot keep pulling apart. It's not, humanity does not work that way. Reminding us that the pain of the past, as we saw this past summer with the movements on racial injustice, that the pains of the past, we can't change them, but we certainly can make the future. And Brett has a glorious lyric. Well, he has many glorious lyrics. Very lucky, but a glorious lyric that speaks to the power of that. How we can't change the past, but we can change how we shape tomorrow. And so, to me, it's become this really powerful tonic, and I'm just happy that we got to write a musical version of Andrew's powerful real life story.
Yeah, Andrew Forstoffel, whose story this was.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more. You've referenced a couple of times about the Andrew traveling across the country. How did you decide, of the folks that Andrew encountered along the way, who and how they would be, written into the musical?
Rock, paper, scissors. Here's the hard part about all this, and we all know this as creators. Once you know a story very well and you get to know it real well, everything is precious. You start to really love these people. If you buy the book, which I think you all should, it's a beautiful book. It's a 400-page glorious book, tells the story. There's a lot of characters we want to have in this story, but as Brett and I know, we had to kind of combine a lot of them. A lot of characters you meet are combinations of 3 or 4 people that all shared traits that were similar, but we kind of created an encapsulation. If you saw it at the Terrace, a good example would be Ethan. Who he meets on a walk in Texas, the guy who thinks he's the Messiah. Chuck and Maggie are combination characters. Things like that. Where Miss Emma and then characters like that are standalones.
Mm-hmm. A lot of the initial structure of the piece, it's interesting because what we adapted as a memoir, but our first encounter with it was not actually as a book. Our first encounter with it was as a podcast. Andrew had told his story as a sort of documentary podcast, and that provided a lot of the structural bones and skeleton for the piece. And so the remnants of that are still, I think, very present in terms of who he met, and obviously the other thing is the direction of the piece. It goes in one, starts in one place and goes to another place. You can't meet people you didn't, so that kind of that also sort of provided a lot of the structure. And I've joked to Andrew and between the team as well that it's kind of miraculous that he did go the way he went, because he ends up in the desert right before the end of the piece, which is so biblical and so narratively perfect. If he had gone the other direction, it might not have had the same kind of narrative effect. So,
wow, cool. So Igor and Marcos, I think it is important that if people are purchasing a ticket, and we hope they are, because we helped you develop this show and we produced this show because we agree with you that this is a story that needs to be told, and it needs to be told over and over again, and it needs to be heard by as many people as are willing to listen. I think it's important that people understand that what Goodspeed produced in the summer of 2019 was the first developmental production of the show ever. We had assisted you with residencies through the Johnny Mercer Writers Grove. The show had been developed through our Festival of New Musicals. Many of our friends of the festival have contributed to the support of this stream, so thank you, friends of the festival. And then that production was the first time the show has ever been on its feet. So it's important for people to understand that this is still very much a work in progress. There are things you want to do to the show when you get the chance to work on it again, and we'll talk about that a little later if we have time. But so my question is for Igor and Marcos. How do you, when you are, I think our audience would be interested to know, how do you decide how you're going to physically interpret a piece that's never been on the stage before? Can you share a little bit of what that process is with our audience?
Yeah, you know what, Marcos, why don't I start? Can you hear me? First of all, I was having some sound issues.
Yeah.
Am I good?
Yeah, you're great.
Marcos, let me start with the
Please, yeah.
The New Musical Festival, right? Because what happened originally is we started this show at Goodspeed at the New Musical Festival there as a staged reading. So what I tried to do at the time was first deal with each individual character's isolation with the idea that there was going to be connectivity along the way, and then that would create a community and a nation, really, of people. So I kind of scattered people around, dispersed them throughout the stage so that there was no real connection there. And there was something visually arresting about it. And when people entered the scene, they just stood up and walked into the scene. And in this particular case, walked down into the music stands. And there was something about that I wanted to see if I could that would be the theme of what I was doing, and kind of riff on that theme and start to expand it. So I mentioned this to Marcos and said, listen, can we try starting with these chairs dispersed around the stage as though we're dealing with people across the country from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast? And then can we see how we transition into these different scenes via that spatial relation? And then the other big question was for Adam Koch, our set designer, is how do we travel? If we don't have a lot of moving pieces and a medium-sized stage, how do we give the sense that we're traveling great distances? Because one of the things about this show, to me, that it really reminds us how expansive this country is, how huge it is, and because of that, a kind of diversity there is within the country. So we kept talking about different ways to do that. Then we talked about platforms that potentially could move. Would they be automated? Would they be man-powered? We all had a combination of both. And then Marcos, you and I started talking about those concepts and started to think of them in terms of physical vernacular, right?
Yeah, I think when I joined the team, there was that first reading production, and I actually told Igor that I actually enjoyed a lot what he did. The simplicity of it was very visual effective, and this is a piece that is not a dance show. It's more of a musical staging, and all the staging that we created evoked sort of like the feelings of each of the characters that are always present from the very beginning to the very end of Andrew's journey through the country. So we try to enhance that with of the movement of the pieces of the chairs and the platforms that Igor was saying. And at the very end, we were very happy because we created. There was a very pedestrian and natural quality to the vocabulary that is presented that we wanted to showcase.
Yeah,
and then there was something. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it was pedestrian in the sense of the show is about walking, right?
Yeah.
And you really did capture all the emotions of that.
Because when Igor and I talked, we were like, well, we're not going to have a big dance break of this real people just doing like ballet dances, because it would just make no sense. So we approach it the way like we dance at a two-step bar, or we approach it with the way a prisoner will walk in the heat. So we did a lot of more natural pedestrian to echo what Andrew was going through.
I always think of our big production number, and this is something that Marcos did, and I thought it was just brilliant, is the walk through the desert. And that really ended up being, in a way, our production number, but in a very different way, right?
I love that one.
And that was one of those moments. I love collaboration because, you know, there are no rules. No one's ever seen how this show lives on its feet. So everything that we do, we hope is the right choice, right? And I know during that day, I had to go and have a script meeting with the guys. And Marcos, you know, we had talked about this moment, but it was left for Marcos to just figure it out. And so I went off to this meeting and came back and they said, can we show this to you? And they did. And I was blown away. I mean, that's something just out of nowhere. All of a sudden is now it's there. Yeah. It's tangible, right? That's what's so exciting to me about this whole collaborative journey. Yeah, with new material.
And speaking to collaboration, I remember that moment we were in tech, and it was not the first time we had been through the walking in the desert scene in tech. And everyone I know, you're like, what are they talking about? But you'll buy your ticket, you'll see the show, right. You'll know exactly what we're talking about when we get there. And there's that light cue that Corey Paddock, our wonderful lighting designer, created when everybody moves in onto the platform and then back off again, and the lights just went. And I think everybody in the room, everybody who was in the room in tech was like, oh, because it was just like he completely dressed that moment with light. It was absolutely stunning. It was just
the one thing throughout that I think we were really, I'm really grateful for is the fact that once we all became on the same page, really pretty soon out of the gate, it was a shorthand from that point on with everyone, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too.
You know, what you're describing is such a perfect example of collaboration, right? Which is at the core of what we do when we create a new piece. So given that, you know, this was the first time the production was on its feet in front of an audience, you must have learned a ton throughout its various, you know, stages of development at Goodspeed. So I'd love to hear from any of you, maybe all of you. You know, what is something you learned in the end that you didn't know you are going to encounter along the developmental path?
Well, mine's very short and I'll pass it on to others. I learned from working with Marcos that there's much more physicality to be explored. Mm-hmm. And I did not originally see that because I started with the reading. So to me, it was a very different thing.
Much more to be explored in future iterations of the show.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I'll also say that, and it's interesting just kind of hearing the way that Marcos and Igor are talking about the, you know, this notion of the pedestrian aspect and all this, and something that I think even just now I'm like you know, we haven't talked about this show in however long, but like just in re-examining all of this for and what people are going to see, because of the fact that these are real or they're based on real people, and there's a realism to the story and the characters. I think what I didn't know going into the project and watching it come to life was kind of interesting to learn about, is how that realistic aspect both contains a profoundness that then has to lift into theatricality. And I think that's, you know, what we're talking about, particularly with this desert moment that Marcos and Igor helped us illuminate, is that we have to believe these people because they are real, and they're what they're going through is very, very grounded, and yet it still has to lift into this theatrical space, which, you know, musically it's trying to do as well. And I think that juxtaposition is really interesting and really dynamic, and kind of part of what is the most exciting thing about the show. It's where you have something that just feels very salt of the earth, slice of life, that then explodes into something utterly profound and theatrical in an instant.
You know something, Brett, we never talked about this, but just so you know, from the get-go, there was something on a very grand scale in regard to the music that you wrote and the book that you wrote, Eric, and that I knew all I needed to do was treat the scenes really honestly, because the grand quality was going to come out.
Right.
Because of what was already on the page. I felt.
Right. And isn't that based in the humanity? I
yes.
think that's based on you really captured it.
And it grows to be grand because it starts in an honest place. Right.
You know, there's a lot, obviously, you know, what did we learn fix-wise? There's stuff we want to fix, obviously. You know, I'm not going to bore everybody with the details of that. What we want to do, some restructuring stuff, some things. Even you know, and I don't like to give the pandemic credit for anything. It's made life hellacious. But it has allowed me to step away from the piece. And just this past week, I was looking at the piece, listening to the piece, and my brain went, "Oh my God, that's exactly what it is." Oh my God, that's, you know, on multiple things that we found were a few issues we wanted to resolve. Some really clear possible fixes that I'm excited to put into it now. So that's great. What did I learn from the piece? I think is that I was really thrilled with. The first one was very, and this is in regards to the last comment on collaboration, to throw the cast into it too, and the creatives. It's not every day you get to work on a piece, especially one that you've written that you have a lot of pride in, along with your writing partner, and you're both. This is your baby. This is your child that you have raised, and now you set him off into the world. But from day one, everyone on the creative team, everyone on the staff at Goodspeed, everyone on the cast, everyone treated this piece like a passion project. And that makes a massive difference. It wasn't just we're putting up a show. It was, we feel very passionate about this story, so we're going to give it everything we got. And that was very, we were very aware of it. And I think that's what made it such a success, you know, in its very first incarnation. Something we learned too was that this show tapped into something, which I know Brett and I want to explore some more. But that was it tapped into. We saw the emotions of a male theater goer, and I'll explain this, but it makes sense. I find a lot of times when you're watching a show, you'll see the couple and the classic older man like next to his wife, you know, and they're not pleased to be there. But the wife's crying at the end, clapping. He's just like, "Get me the hell out of here." But this one, at a certain point in the show, we just started hearing like sniffling and like some like deep cries and everything. We're looking around and we're seeing all these older men are in tears. And they are having this profound experience about this story. I don't want to spoil anything, but the story, because passing through, as Brett brilliantly describes, it's like a funnel. It's these giant themes, and they funnel down into a very small story with grand themes, you know, and teaches us that we all have our own trauma, you know, and it's just as worthy as anybody else's trauma, and it all funnels down into the story. So we are finding that, you know, men were so affected by this story. You know, Brett and I remember, Brett, you were there when this young, like 19-year-old guy came up to us and was like, "Hey guys, like, I'm not really a theater guy, but I came with my mom, and like, I don't know what happened, man, but like, that was really like that, like, you know," and we were seeing younger men showing up at the theater, and Brett, can you say, and mothers. Mothers, I was
going to say a lot of moms, saying, "I wish I want to bring my son to this. I want my son to see this." Yeah.
You know, and it took on a sense of a responsibility almost now that we want to continue with. That there is something that I think we're seeing in this country that maybe we're missing something about the humanity and how we're raising our children, and something is missing, and this story seems to speak to that theme, and maybe this can serve to make us all stop and listen, if you will, and think about that a little more, and find ways we can build a better humanity out of this one man's journey.
Yeah. Oh my goodness! And Melissa, thank you. She says she's so excited to share the show with her kids because she got to experience it in person. That's wonderful, Melissa. Thank you so much for sharing that. You've answered all the questions.
I know those are good. You know, I did think of one. I thought of another one though. So we announced it, here very recently, of course. And I'm curious to know about your connections and conversations with members of the cast. I would only assume that there were texts flying and things like that.
Many of them are with us tonight, David. You're not in the comment section, but many of the company members and the people who support. Miss Emma.
Jennifer Warren.
Terrific.
Sorry, David, we interrupted.
No, that's great.
Was there a question in there?
Yeah, no, I was just asking you. Fair enough. If folks were texting one another once the news was out and official, and it sounds like that's probably exactly what happened.
Yeah.
There was a lot
you
of
always
yes
hope that your casts are going to stay close. I always feel that that's part of a success of putting a show on, is that if your cast remains friends for years after. This group of people seems so tight, and it really makes me happy. And of course, the second the announcement happened, the text started to fly and social media started to, buzz, and yeah, everyone's excited.
On that note, Igor, I think it's really interesting too, because so almost now a year ago, right when the big shutdown happened, we put together this online concert. We were, one of the few, or one of the first, I should say, handful of people that did this, and it was just out of the drive to be creative and put something together. And we sort of ended it with this this version of Passing Through, which is the name of the song that opens Act 2. And I remember, there's just kind of this like slow, sweet part at the end, and we had, everybody had to film themselves singing it. And I think Max, who plays Andrew, had recorded his part first, and everybody was recording to him. And so there's all these shots towards the end of everybody just listening, isolated at home, listening to Max, sing this part. And the emotion of, I think it was like missing the show, also the unknown of what was before us, the feeling of isolation, suddenly like that we were missing the connection with other people. It was like really meaningful. And I think that experience also taught us about what is contained in this show that we didn't even know about until obviously we were all in this situation.
I think a lot of us were surprised. I know I was surprised by the depth of what the show contained in that very first production. I think I always saw where it was going because I had the joy of being in the room at the Mercer Grove when you presented a couple of the first songs. Yeah. But the power of it, everything you're speaking to about how it appealed to a male audience, how it resonated for people, what a community it has created really all along its journey. And I think that speaks to the message of the work. We owe a huge debt of gratitude to Andrew Forstoffel for taking this trip and sharing his story with us. If people want to read the book, it's Walking to Listen. And you can find it anywhere you search books. So I definitely encourage people to read it. There you go.
There it is.
Someone's getting residuals.
This guy.
Maybe we can get Andrew onto one of these events with us. That would be great, David. We should work on that. Yeah. All right, guys. David, any last thoughts as the new kid on the block with the show?
Like I said, having experienced it very recently myself, I'm just thrilled that this is what we are launching Goodspeed On Demand with. And I can't wait for audiences, some of whom are with us now who have seen it before, as we know, get to experience again. And then, folks like myself who haven't or hadn't experienced it get to experience it now as well. So we look forward to sharing it with you. Don't forget to buy your tickets. They're on sale now at goodspeed.org. It'll be streaming from March 15th through April 4th. There's some information for you on the screen. And also, we hope that you'll join us for our next In the Green Room as well. So mark your calendars for Tuesday, March 23rd. And I believe we've invited some of the cast, yeah?
If they haven't checked their email tonight, they may not have seen it, but we're going to be inviting some of the company to join us.
Yes.
That'll be fun. Check in with all of them and get their reaction to everything that's going on. Have we done our housekeeping here?
I think that's most of it, except yeah.
No, Eric and Brett, if people want to track you guys, keep up with your work, where can they do that?
Right. Is my handle on there? I think it is, right?
Your handle was up there.
Let's go on Instagram at THEULLOA. I post incessantly, so you'll learn everything about me.
Okay. And Brett, you have a new podcast that you've been working on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. I just released at the end of last year, beginning of this year, a podcast called In Strange Woods, which is available on all platforms. It's a narrative 5-episode podcast. It's not like an interview podcast. It's a narrative story, musical. Definitely encourage you to check it out, especially if you do like Passing Through. I think you'll really like this story as well. It's called In Strange Woods.
It's so good, you guys. It is so good.
Brett's not going to brag about it, so I am.
I mean,
number one on iTunes. Number one.
Seriously?
Yeah, it was #1 on the fiction charts. And
guys, they're not fooling around here. This is a serious musical in podcast form. It's really good.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
That's a good place to send it out. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you to our audience. We really hope that you are going to tune in to the stream of the Passing Through archive capture. We never thought it would see the light of day, but the pandemic turned things on its head. And thank you to everyone who has cooperated and pulled together to make this happen. We're really excited, as David said, for it to launch Goodspeed on Demand. And we have a little bit of B-roll clip to send you all out on with. So here's a little something to whet your appetites for Passing Through. Thanks, everybody.
Looks like we actually might have a slight issue with that, but you know what? That means you get to buy your ticket so you can get to see it again. Which is pretty exciting, right?
Do we have can we not?
Yeah, I think we had a.
Oh, my bad. Okay.
This is real loud.
All right.
Quick, you're on.
I'll tell everybody if they're just
something
dying to
dance.
see more Passing Through, they can Google Playbill Passing Through Concert.
Oh yeah.
Right now, you can Google Playbill Passing Through Concert, and you'll see the it's like 30 minutes of music from the show that that you spoke about earlier. So sorry about that. You know, the interwebs get in the way all the time. All right, everybody, stay safe,
folks. Have a great evening.
Thanks,
guys. Thank you.
Well,